Hello and welcome to another video. I hope you enjoyed the Sunday special one. I'm going to try and drop as many as I can. I can't guarantee I'm going to get much more out that are going to be extra videos, but I'm still going to be doing 2 videos a week. I'm going to say this now, that YouTube has, they really don't like me. I looked at my algorithm, at the analytics you get on YouTube. My last 9 videos have only been pushed out to 5,000 subscribers, which is a bit bizarre when I've got 10,000 subscribers. But you see the reach, and each video, some of them have only been sent out 1,000 times. That means only 1,000 people who watch my channel got the notifications to see it on their display or their channel or anything like that. So there is something going on with YouTube. I've been told by other people who make small videos like mine that it's because YouTube want to push the big creators during this winter period, because that's where all the big sponsorship money is going at the moment, all the ad revenue. So people like my channel don't get pushed out there, which is sad to know that new people are not really seeing my videos. But that said, we are still going ahead. We're still doing all the Christmas videos. I'm still wearing the same jumper. I haven't actually got another Christmas jumper. My wife's got loads. I think she's got about 5 that she keeps wearing, like, because she works in a shop and they wear Christmas jumpers every day. That, you know, she got a alternate. With me, I can just wear my Syndicate original one. And yeah, so today's one is a bit of a weird video. Okay, so I enjoyed this one because it was gonna be the only Christmas video I was gonna put out there. And that's because it reminds me of growing up, because it refers to something that I'm making a mess of describing this because I don't want to give the game away right at the start. But it reminds me of a show that was on children's TV years ago. And there may be a reason for that, but you're going to have to wait to the end of the video to work that out, or for me to tell you. But we are looking back at 1920, between 1920 and 1925. Now, we spoke a lot about the Victorians loving all the Christmas stories and ghost stories around Christmas. Well, that tradition carried on well into like the 1920s and 1940s. Even more so after the World Wars, that people would gather, and instead of sitting there in sorrow talking about the war, they would come up with these ghost stories that would entertain the people around there. And this is where this one sort of comes from. So between 1920 and 1923, in a nice big mansion house in Oxford, a group of people have gathered on Christmas Eve for a Christmas Eve celebration. In amongst these people, we have businessmen, we have poets, we have reporters. It's all the well-to-do people of Oxfordshire. And some people coming down from London to join them as well, to add into the mix. Now, from what I understand, it was a very harsh winter, and the people that travelled had struggled to get through the snow and the ice to get to this mansion house. But soon, they're sitting around this great big table, all tucking into a nice dinner. After that, they retreat to the room next door, where they all gather around a fire. Normally they'd be sitting around there talking about business and opportunities, all that sort of stuff, the boring stuff. This year they were talking about ghost stories, and as going around, each one was telling a different ghost story. And this happened because one of them had come from London, and during the meal had mentioned 50 Berkeley Square. Now, I'm not going to tell you the story of 50 Berkeley Square, but it's its own separate ghost story. Some people say it's based around Christmas, but it may be. But, you know, if you want me to cover 50 Berkeley Square and give you my take on it, I'm happy to do that. But that happened in 1871. But that sparked the conversation. So you've got all these gentlemen all sitting around sharing stories. The lady of the house is also sitting there and listening to all what's going on. To make it more atmospheric, the lady of the house had insisted that the room was only going to be lit by candles. So they're sitting around there in a nice spooky atmosphere while I was telling these stories. After a few of them had been told, the lady of the house turned around and said that, really, you need to hear from our butler. And everyone's looking going, what's the butler got to do with this? She says the butler has an amazing story from his childhood and they really need to hear it. They call Clarence in. Now Clarence is their elderly butler. He comes into the room in a little bit of a shaky state. He's not used to being pushed into the front and centre and being asked to speak. He's a very tall, slender gentleman. The lady of the house turns around and says that, Clarence, I'd like you to tell our friends your story of your childhood and about what happened. First of all, Clarence looks at her blankly, as if he doesn't know what she's talking about. And she said, you know, your Christmas story. Clarence sort of like sighs and looks slightly depressed that he's got to tell this story, as if he's not going to really enjoy retelling it. But without asking approval from the lord of the house and the lady of the house, Clarence pours himself a brandy and stands at the end of the table, takes a big swig of the brandy and starts telling his story. Now during the telling of his story, he does get interrupted for questions by the people around that table. I'm probably going to put some of them in now, but he does get interrupted quite a lot. But Clarence went on to explain that he was born in a place just outside of Wales. One day a man turned up at the house with a letter for his father. Now unfortunately for Clarence, his mother had passed away and his little sister had passed away, and in this little house was just him and his father. The father opened up the letter and said this couldn't be real. Some extended member of their family had passed away, and they were invited to Boars Hill to meet somebody about inheritance of a property. They had to reply to the letter. Another letter would come with a date for a horse and coach to come up and collect them. So this was in 1860. So Clarence was 10 then, so he's now sort of like 70, still working as a butler. And my maths may be wrong now, but he's an old butler. He's still working away. You know what, with the new pension laws coming out now, we'll be working till 100 anyway, so retirement won't be a thing. So not put a political spin on this video, but it seems the way we're going, doesn't it? They replied to the letter, and a few weeks later they get another letter back with the date that this coach is coming to get them. The morning of the coach comes along, they jump in and they travel down to Oxford. Now Boars Hill is just outside of Oxford, but they meet this gentleman in his nice office in Oxford who explains to them that their extended family member has passed away and they have now inherited the house, and it's quite a big house and it's in Boars Hill. They are taken over to this property. They turn up outside what they describe as their most stunning building that they've ever seen in their life, but it was very run down. I've tried to look for this house. They called it Boars Hill House. Now, Boars Hill has got a lot of old houses around there, a lot of old manor houses. I've gone onto the old map. I can see on a map in 1860, Boars Hill House. After that, it seems to disappear. Now, there's no modern house there called Boars Hill House. I don't know if this has changed its name or whatever, but this was Boars Hill House, which is a manor house in the middle of Boars Hill. And apparently it was a stunning old manor house that passed through family members, and it had come to the turn of Clarence's family to own the house. But this was like a 6-bedroom building, and it had a big hall in there and a big dining area, and him and his father felt a bit lost. But they moved into this property. From the very first day, Clarence believed the house was haunted, and his father sort of went along with it and agreed with it because certain things would happen in that building. Doors to rooms that were never being used would open up and slam. They would go up and fasten the doors, only for the next day that door to slam shut again. So little things like that went on. But they busied their time by trying to repair some of the stuff that was falling apart on that building. And it's sad to say that the building was in a really bad state. And Clarence and his dad didn't really have the money to look after it. So it was like managed into decline. They set a room up that they could live comfortable in as their living quarters, and a bedroom each that they could maintain heat in. But the rest of the house was just sort of like sealed up and left. The big hall area where people would have big functions and all that years ago was basically derelict. They'd boarded up some of the windows because some of the windows had been broken in there, but they didn't have the money to maintain the house. So it was quite a sad situation. After living there for a few months, Clarence was starting to get into the rhythm of his new style of living. He would spend his time trying to maintain the garden outside as well as the building. The garden was a massive area, and sort of you're talking acres, and you could tell that once it was a beautiful landscaped area, but now it's just all overgrown with thorns and bushes. Soon the winter started to roll in, and it was Christmas time. The weather was harsh and very snowy. Coming along to Christmas Eve, Clarence is outside just walking around in the snow in the garden when he looks down the pathway to see this elderly gentleman standing at the end of the gate. The gentleman puts his hand up and waves at Clarence. Clarence nervously waves back. Now this is a 10-year-old boy. Clarence carefully makes his way down to the gentleman. As he gets there, the gentleman says hello to Clarence and says, you know, what a lovely house you have. And in the snow, it hid a lot of the tatty areas and the poor roof conditions of the building. Clarence turned around and looked at the house and went, yes, it is a lovely building. He turned back round and the gentleman had gone. Clarence was really puzzled by this. He was like, why did the gentleman run off? He didn't think this gentleman was a ghost. He just thinks that he took too long looking around, and when he looked back, the gentleman had just walked off in a different direction. A few hours later, Clarence is in the kitchen area of the house, and he sees the figure of the man walking around the back of a hedge around the garden. Clarence's eyes follow him and realise that he's actually heading towards the front of the house. Clarence tells his dad that this gentleman is back again. They open up the front door, and yes, Clarence is right. Down the end of the pathway, standing at the gate, was this gentleman. This time, Clarence and his dad walk down the path to speak to him. The gentleman is struggling for breath. He doesn't seem that well. And they describe his clothes as quite big and baggy on him. He looked like a big figure, but it was all made up of different layers of clothing, and underneath he was probably a very skinny person. He had a really big grey bushy beard and really big grey hair. They're talking to the gentleman, and the gentleman is struggling more and more to breathe. The weather is getting worse. The nice flurries of snow they've been having was turning into sort of a slushy sleet. Clarence's father offers the gentleman to come into the house out of the poor weather. The gentleman accepts. They walk into the house and they sit down. The gentleman explains that he used to know the old owners of the house, and that it's nice to see somebody come back into the house and bring life back to it. He offers Clarence and his father a gift. He brings out a pine cone that has a red ribbon around it. He says not much to offer on Christmas, but for their kindness of bringing it out of the snow, he'd like to give it to them. They go, oh, that's lovely. We haven't got much Christmas decorations up. Clarence and his dad had no real money to speak of, and they used to get by on working chores in the village just to maintain the building. So not as if this gentleman just walked into this big house well off with loads of food around. The gentleman understood right away that this family was struggling, and it was nice of them to offer him to come in for a warm drink and to keep himself warm for a bit before going back out. But after a few hours of talking, it was getting darker outside, and Clarence's father turned around and said, look, I don't want to chuck you out on Christmas Eve into this really terrible weather. We haven't got much to offer you, but we do have another room that I can light the fire in, that you can spend the evening in there if you want to and stay there overnight. And the gentleman's eyes lit up and he goes, oh, that's wonderful, brilliant, thank you so much. With that, they settled down for the evening. They stoked the fire. The weather outside was getting worse. It now turned into a blizzard condition. The wind was getting up. Some of the windows upstairs were blowing in, and Clarence had to run up and try and shut the windows. It was sort of like a Christmas Eve storm. The late evening came, and the three of them decided to go to bed. Now, Clarence's father comes up to Clarence and turns around and says, "No, do me a favour. Before you go to bed tonight, pull your chest up against the door. He goes, we don't know who this gentleman is, and if he does come in, you'll hear the chest move and it'll give you a warning." Clarence looks at his dad going, "Well, what do you think's going to happen?" And Clarence's dad is just like, "No, just be on the safe side. We'll do this. We don't know who he is," which is very sensible. At this point in the story, people back in 1920s turned around and asked Clarence some questions. They couldn't help but jump the gun. They're asking Clarence, is this gentleman a ghost? Did Clarence actually physically touch him? Did anybody touch him? Did I know he was real? All these sort of questions you would ask somebody that is telling you this long-winded, to be truthful, bizarre story. And you can go, yeah, Shane, that's a long-winded story, but, you know, it's a good payoff, right? But yes, so they're asking him all these questions, and Clarence is taking the time to answer them. As Clarence is telling this story, his mannerisms have changed. He's become more straighter. He's standing straight. He's got colour in his cheeks, probably from the brandy. He's starting to tell the story with a bit of pride and a bit of passion. It may be that all of a sudden, just being from the lonely butler, he's now the centre of attention. He goes back to telling the story. And he describes this scene of the evening where he's laying in bed and he does celebrate Christmas in the house, and he's excited for Christmas Day. A few days before, they got a big goose that they were going to have for dinner. They had a few friends they'd made that were coming over to Boars Hill House to celebrate Christmas with them for dinner. He was looking forward to it, but also because they had a young son like him, and he had someone to play with around the house. He was struggling to get asleep, but eventually he did fall asleep. Then he's woken up by the sound of children running in and around the house. First of all, he thinks he's overslept, that the guests are there already. He jumps up in bed with a start. He sees two young boys run out of his bedroom. His bedroom door is wide open. But he also notices that it's still pitch black. It's still like night time. He gets out of the bed and starts walking out to the landing. He can hear music playing downstairs. He starts following the sounds and he heads down the big stairway. He notices that the once worn wooden floor was now looking brand new. The walls that had fallen off plaster on had like a satin red wallpaper all over them. He's getting creeped out by this. He walks downstairs a bit further and he gets the first glance across the hall. Now normally, as you come down the stairway, there's a big partition across there that they'd put there because the hall was too expensive to heat and they didn't want to keep it open so they could keep the rest of the house warm. As you walk down now, this partition isn't there and he can see the whole hallway. In that hall, there's all tables set out with loads of lovely food, around about 20 or 15 people standing there eating and drinking. In the corner, there are a few musicians there playing flutes, clarinets and a violin, and it was like a lovely atmosphere. But Clarence walks in. As he walks into that room, everybody stops to look at Clarence. And Clarence is looking at himself and he's like, realised that he's still in his pyjamas and that he's come downstairs, obviously not expecting to have a house full of people. And he's wondering, what has his dad done? Why has his dad done this and didn't tell him that this event was going to go on? And he's looking around trying to find his dad. He can't find his dad, but what he does see, at the end of the room, there's a table. Sitting at that table is the old man that they've let stay in the house overnight. As he starts to head towards the gentleman to ask him some questions, he's distracted by the double doors in the hall. Now these double doors have been smashed and just been boarded up. He had boarded them up with his dad himself, but all the glass was perfect and they were open. And you could see children playing just outside. Catching his curiosity, he went out to look. What he describes is that The garden that was once tatty and run down was now in pristine condition. All the bushes were shaped into figures and the walkways were all lit with candles. There's a thin layer of snow, not as if there'd been this big horrible storm that had only happened a few hours ago, but there's a thin layer of snow over the ground and everything looks absolutely beautiful. Clarence is on the edge of losing his mind. He can't understand what is going on. He starts telling himself that this is a dream and he's trying to wake up. He grabs a handful of snow and rubs it over his face to see if it's going to make him wake up. It doesn't. He's just there in that hallway at that moment of time. He goes back into the hall. He walks down to the gentleman, and as he's walking, everybody is just staring at him. They've all stopped talking and now are just watching Clarence walking towards this gentleman in the corner. He walks up to the gentleman and says, "What is going on?" The gentleman turns and says that sometimes in life it's best not to ask questions and to just enjoy yourself. Clarence looks around and again everybody is staring at him. He goes, "They don't want me here. They're all looking at me." He goes, "No, they just don't know you." Now for a 10-year-old boy, this is a lot for him to take in. Now he starts asking this gentleman, like, "How did you fix this? How did you fix that?" Not thinking that this could be a dream or that this isn't common sense, just doesn't add up to what has happened. He's really starting to believe that this is real life for where he is. He turns away from the gentleman and starts wandering around the hall. He walks past the fireplace. He can feel the heat from the fire. He's looking at the people around there that are standing there and they're talking to each other again. He doesn't recognise anyone, but more than that, he can't find his father. He starts walking around the rest of the rooms trying to find his father. As he goes into each room, the rooms are absolutely pristine, as if they're brand new. All the old broken wooden furniture is all perfect. All the windows that were broken are all fixed. And he's just completely losing his mind. Clarence makes his way back to the hall. He stands at the end of the hall, shouting down to the gentleman at the end, "Where's my father?" The gentleman doesn't reply to him, and he shouts louder again, "Where's my father?" Something strange starts to happen. Every time Clarence shouts out, "Where's my father?" some of the figures that are standing there looking at him start fading away. And he shouts again even louder, "Where's my father?" Again, more of these figures start fading away, but also things like the musician and the tables all start going. Soon all that remains is Clarence standing at one end of the room and the stranger standing at the other end of the room. The building is still in pristine condition. The conditions of the walls and the floor haven't changed. They're still really nice. Clarence starts walking up to the man. The man lifts his hand up and puts his hand on Clarence's head. The next thing he knows, Clarence wakes up in bed and it's Christmas morning. Clarence sits up in bed and the chest that he put by his bedroom door was there. He hadn't been moved. He opens up the bedroom door, goes down, and the first thing he notices that all the walls are back to being tatty and run down. He goes down the worn out stairs and his father is already up and in the kitchen. And he says to his father, "I had a really bizarre thing happen last night." And the father turns around and says, "Well, strangely enough, I told you they're going to fall down. Anyway, watch my last video. I say they keep falling down." The whole lot's going to fall down by the end of this. I know it will. I put them up like, I don't know, every hour they fall down. But his father goes, "Bizarrely enough, I got up this morning and the gentleman that we lent the room to last night has gone." And Clarence goes, "Well, I see him last night." He goes, "I had this weird experience where the house is all perfect and, the father cuts him off and says that he had a very strange dream last night, that he come downstairs and that the hall was full of people, but all these people were wearing animal masks and wolf masks." And Clarence goes, "Well, I didn't see that." He goes, "But from what I see, everyone was eating dinner and having fun and everything, but the gentleman that we let stay here was standing at the end." And his father goes, "I had the same." He goes, "In my dream, I had the same thing. The gentleman was standing at the end of the hall." And they look at each other and they can't work this out. They've both had this weird dream, but Clarence is saying that it didn't feel like a dream to them. Things just felt too real. Both Clarence and his father are really confused, But one thing they do decide to do is to open up the partition that goes to the big hall. They walk in now. They're expecting this icy blast of cold air. That room was really warm. They walk round and the old fireplace that hasn't been lit since they've taken over the place has got warm embers in the fireplace. Somebody has lit that fire. But without taking down that partition, there's no other entrance into that hall because the double doors that were broken are all boarded up as well, so they can't even come in from the garden. They're looking at each other in complete confusion. They don't know how this has happened. The father turns around and says, "No, we haven't got time to dwell on this. We've got guests coming over. We've got to get dinner ready." So they go back and they start getting Christmas dinner ready. Soon the guests arrived and Clarence is very happy to have a friend there that he can play with. But one of the guests they've invited over comes up to Clarence's father. Clarence is standing nearby and he sees something that sends a little bit of a shiver down his spine. They turn around and say that they met a gentleman in the village as they're coming through, and he's asked them to give him these gifts. One of them was this pine cone with a red ribbon around it, and the other one was an animal mask of a wolf. The father just goes completely white and he turns to Clarence and says, "That was in my dream last night." Clarence turned around and said, "Well, we've already got one of these pine cones from the gentleman already, so we know it's come from him." They go round and yes, there is the other pine cone still on the side that the gentleman gave them. So then they've got two of these pine cones, but they've got this wolf mask, as if the gentleman is trying to remind them of their dreams the night before, as if to say it was a real thing, it was a real event. Christmas Day goes on. They're all sitting around there eating their dinner and having a lovely fun time. But in the back of their mind, Clarence and his father, people could tell that something was on their mind. They couldn't work out what it was. After dinner, Clarence and his friend get up and they start playing outside and they're playing in the snow. Clarence looks up and he sees the gentleman standing at the end of the gate. The gentleman waves and waves goodbye, starts walking down the lane and fades away halfway down the lane. Clarence just stands there. Normally he would have freaked out by this, but seeing this figure just dissolving in front of him just seemed nothing compared to what happened the night before. When Clarence is retelling his story to the guests in the house in the 1920s, he says that nothing else happened after that. No, they got the house into a decent state. They was able to sell it, and they got a smaller house. And his father passed away, and he left him on his own, and he went into a bit of care for some time. He ended up in Oxford. He worked his way up in catering, and then become a servant, and that is where he is today, being the servant of the house. People are aghast by what Clarence has just told them. They think it's like an absolutely fascinating story. They loved it. Maybe one of them loved it a little bit too much. A book came out quite a few years later, and some of the elements of that story seem to have made it into a book. That book is the Box of Delights. One of those guests at that house in Oxford in the 1920s was a gentleman called John Masefield. Now, he went on to write a book called Midnight Folk, and the follow-up was the Box of Delights. And if you've ever read the Box of Delights or seen the BBC dramatisation of it, you'll understand where elements of this story fit into it. This strange old man turning up with these big old coats, and how he waved down the end of the pathway, and how they met with Mr. Harker, and the wolves are running, where the saying comes from, and in some parts of it these men turning into wolves, and Clarence's dad was given this wolf mask and all this sort of stuff. It does seem that John Masefield did draw elements from Clarence's story and used it as inspiration for the Box of Delights. But other people that were at that dinner, that Christmas meal in the 1920s, also had friends in the Ghost Club, and the Ghost Club heard about this story and they put it down to being a time slip. So could this be one of our earliest time slips that have been recorded and used as inspiration for a TV documentary, a book, film? Now, for me, the Box of Delights is just an amazing thing. As a kid, I've rewatched it since. No, it doesn't hit the same. It does feel a bit dated, just the way it was done, the special effects. But I remember as a kid watching this programme on the BBC and absolutely loving it. But let's break it down a little bit. What really happened here? So you've got Clarence and his father, brought up in a small house. They get given this big mansion house, and apparently this is completely true. That did happen. And I say, Boars Hill House, I can't find it, but I do know just by looking it up and looking at an old map, there was a place called Boars Hill House. That falls into the right category. The Ghost Club believe it was a time slip. Very plausible explanation, this being a time slip, if you believe in that stuff. But the other side of it is that this is an old butler who doesn't get much sort of like fun and entertainment. Maybe he found a way of keeping people's interest by coming up with these fantastic stories that he enjoys telling. Now, during his retelling of this story, it was described how he become so confident, and he was really passionate and enjoying telling this story. I can actually hear the bells on here going to fall off in a minute. I can hear the tape that I stuck them on falling down, ruining all the illusions of my set decoration. Poor E.T. just be sat on his own in a minute. But yes, so this is just one of those stories that I love because it does remind me of the Box of Delights. But it's only going to be the only Christmas story I was going to tell this Christmas, but we're getting them all out there this time, so we've got lots more to come if I can get the time to film them, edit them and get them out there. But again, thank you for all your comments. I loved reading your comments. I know there's some comments about it's a warning not to sleep in chests and cupboards and all that, and it did make me laugh. And Vicky, I've got my Just for Men hair dye on order, saying I look like your granddad. I know what you meant, okay? No, I'll let you off. I know you tried to correct it after, but it did make me laugh. It was brilliant. But just reminded me about someone saying about don't hide in wardrobes and all that. Where my studio is, it's in the back of my bedroom. The wardrobe that's here now, this was my old bedroom as a kid. And me and my cousin were playing hide and seek, and he ran up, got into my old wardrobe, and the wardrobe fell over. He trapped him in it. The problem was, I went into such fit of giggles that I was not capable of going down and getting my mum and my aunt to get back up. My cousin was trapped under the wardrobe. He could have died. Glenn, if you ever see this, mate, I'm so sorry. He just remember standing there and he just went boom. Sorry. Right, okay. I hope you enjoy this video. Like, subscribe. I'm probably going to lose so many subscribers now. Pull myself together. I've just got the images of it going over in front of me. Oh, poor Glenn. Right, if you like the video, like, subscribe, hype, anything. Go watch a better video. Right, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.